In the studio with me tonight to give their reactions, political commentator Lucy Beresford, barrister and futurist Andrew Eborn, and assistant editor of Spiked, Ella Whelan. Welcome to all of you. Lucy, I imagine that you, like the rest of us, couldn't quite imagine this story being the first big story of the year that was going to grip the nation. It kind of came out of the blue, but it shouldn't have, really.
Well, it didn't entirely come out of the blue because it's been written up about a lot in periodicals like The Private Eye and Computer Weekly. They've been writing about it for over a decade.
Well, I mean, the newspapers have as well, but the thing is, it's never quite had this kind of volume,
It hasn't had the momentum.
No.
And despite the fact that it was an incredible drama, I also can't help feeling that it's partly because there is no other news and there was almost no other TV programme that was kind of bringing people together in quite the same way as this one did. And it becomes a talking point, so more people watch it. And I think it's that momentum that has really seen Rishi Sunak make the announcement today. And the tragedy is that it does seem like it's been a TV programme that's kick-started everything.
Right.
That's the tragedy of it. Actually, nothing was really happening. And there were small pockets of compensation here for very small numbers of people, particularly the people who had the gumption to actually stand up to the big might of the post office and challenge them. But if you think that actually it is a David versus Goliath scenario, it shouldn't actually have come to that.
No, it should never have come to that. Andrew, you're a lawyer.
Absolutely.
I mean, the lawyers will literally be salivating at the prospect of what could be years and years and years of litigation.
Well,
because there's no reason why any of these people who've been so badly treated should sign on the dotted line and say, "Oh, thanks very much indeed. I'll take the 75 grand."
Yeah, it is the greatest miscarriage of justice that we've seen in the UK for a very, very long time.
Or maybe ever.
Quite right. And it's quite right that we sort of shine a spotlight on it. There are many more questions about what happened. I mean, basically, the ITV drama, the trouble is they mixed a bit of reality with a bit of fictionalisation.
Yeah.
And that's what we
very much like this show, I think.
Thank you. But what they've got a lot of different people coming forward now, these sub-post office masters, and talking about their stories. And they've been on all over the media at the moment. And the tragedy, when they used to be the cornerstone of any local community, and they've been basically vilified within that community, the damage that they've suffered is horrendous.
Yeah.
And at the moment, they're trying to work out a compensation. It would normally take years and years and years to overturn
Well, it has done, hasn't it?
But they're talking about trying to basically speed that up. And what they're saying today is maybe what we're going to do is get a few guilty people will be let off. But isn't that much better than one innocent person? Well, as a baby lawyer, we were always told that it's better that 99 guilty people are let off than one innocent person convicted.
Yes.
That's got to be right.
Yes, I suppose so. But, Ella, one of the things that we're hearing at the moment, some of the people in the legal fraternity are saying this is very dangerous as a precedent because it means that Parliament is outlawing, you know, giving everything to the power of the lawyers, and actually Parliament is sticking its nose into things which it shouldn't do, because after this, everyone will say, well, you can just make a new law, can't you?
Yeah, and I think that is a problem, but I think more importantly is if I was somebody who was affected by this or the kid of someone who's affected by this, I'd say take them to court and get everything you can.
Everything you can. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, because there's, you know, I think there's two levels to this. There's the sort of technical legal question of people being exonerated and proper justice being seen to be done and cash being given to people. But there's also just a much big political question of this. It's sort of a clear example of the little person being screwed. And it's symptomatic of what a lot of people are feeling this country is like at the moment, which is nobody cares, no one will listen to you. And, you know, individuals like Ed Davey or Paula Venables, you know, might be two people who are involved in a lot of post office bosses, a lot of, you know, people high up in government who turned a blind eye to all of this. But the reason why individuals like that become so important is because they do the kind of go away, you're so annoying, small person thing. And I think there's, you know, in all areas of politics, there are instances of that, whether it's discussions about immigration, Brexit, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
There is this sense that people have that ordinary people just aren't listened to and are ignored. And this is an example of that happening on an extreme scale.
I think so. And worse than that, in a way, because not only were they ignored, but they were kind of vilified.
They were actually
they were
prosecuted by the post office, and it's not even just that they were prosecuted. They were prosecuted with the post office in full knowledge that there were hundreds, if not thousands of people that this was happening to. And the post office said to their own helpline staff, you must say to these post submasters, oh, you're the only one that's
Yeah.
having a problem
Yeah.
with this Horizon
Well,
product.
it's called lying, isn't it?
It's basically
it's
lying.
absolutely lying.
And
I mean,
it's
let's call it
that
what it is.
It's that corporate malfeasance on a grand scale.
Yeah.
And no one at the moment is seeing anything happening to the people with it.
Exactly.
Okay, so a woman loses her CBE. What does that actually achieve? Whereas actually you've got a systemic problem here, twofold really. One which is corporate governance, and one which is who is still making sure that Horizon and Fujitsu's products are still being contracted within the government.
And it
there are
comes
further
back once
contracts
again.
as
It
well,
comes back
yes.
once again to who's going to pay all this
Yeah.
compensation, because at some point or other, I think we'll have to put a limit on what the government puts in, which is basically our money, and how much Horizon are going to set aside, or how much Fujitsu are going to set aside for this kind of fee. But let's have a look at a little bit of breaking news here. A petition demanding that Sir Ed Davey return his knighthood has now reached 10,000 signatures within 1 day of the petition actually being launched. Now, we saw, of course, the CBE being returned from Paula Vendels,
yeah.
because she saw that 1 million people had actually said that she should do it, and the Prime Minister had suggested it as well. I mean, you know, it's a start, I suppose, but I mean, again, lots of people say she made an awful lot of money while she was doing that job. She misled an awful lot of people, and it's not really good enough to just go, oh, here's my gong, can I go away now? Well, no, you can't, actually.
Well, in a particularly emotional interview with one of the postmasters in the press over the last few days, one of them said, well, I don't just want her CBE, I want her pension and her, you know, I was stripped of everything for decades. Why is it that she just gets to give back her
Partly
nice little
because so
badge?
much of her remuneration was based on profits made by the post office and really good...
And bonuses as well, right?
And that's the real question, is it? What happened to the money? A lot of the sub-postmasters
Had to pay that
said,
money back.
hang on, the money's
So
gone
where did it
somewhere.
go?
They had to pay that money. Where is that money now? So we look forensically, and sunlight is the best disinfectant. What Alan Bates has said, because everybody said, let's get him a knighthood and so on and so forth. He's not going to do that until everybody else's gong has disappeared. And he works on that sort of premise. But we need to look. There are so many questions which are not yet answered.
Well, it was systematic that actually there was a court case whereby the judge, Peter Fraser, actually said to the post office, your system actually, we're going to get an IT expert to come and look at your system. And he's found lots of discrepancies. And basically the post office rubbished that and actually closed down the case. So there were actually... Over the last 10 years, there have been ways in which the post office has systematically tried to pull the wool over everyone's eyes.
And also, the guy who's currently seeking, you know, immunity from prosecution, I think Gareth Jenkins is his name. He was one of those people who actually gave evidence against the postmasters and the postmistresses, saying that they were basically stealing money because there was nothing wrong with the system.
Absolutely.
So for him to say that he now wants to give evidence and be exonerated in some way, while he was responsible to a large extent as being the witness for the prosecution who locked these people up or who made sure that they got convicted, you know, I'm not sure we should give it to him.
No, you're absolutely right, Matt. And as we say, there's so many questions that need to be answered. What I also hate, when looking from the justice point of view, is that people were forced to admit guilt when they weren't guilty. And that should never, ever, ever happen. So when people have basically said, look, well, if you do this, you won't go to prison. Plead guilty to this basically fraudulent accounting, and we'll let you off the rest. You won't go to prison.
Incredible.
That's got to be wrong. Never, ever, ever plead guilty if you're not guilty.
No, exactly right. But it's easy to say when you're sitting in a nice, cosy television studio, when your life is
I love
being
this
put,
TV studio,
isn't it
absolutely.
great? But when your life is being literally flashed before your eyes, and they're saying to you, you could lose everything if you don't do this.
If you've been told you are the only one, I think if they had known that there were, you know, 900 of them, it would have been a completely different
Well, I've heard
ballgame.
people say that if it hadn't been for the time that it happened, if it happened now, social media would have taken over. There would have been Facebook groups, there would have been Twitter spheres, there would have been, you know, Instagram accounts where people would have known that others were suffering in the same way. But back then, they didn't know.
No, absolutely. And you're right, because if this hadn't been the ITV programme, it wouldn't have got the headline news that it does now.
That just speaks to storytelling, though, I think.
Oh,
I think it was the way in which it was dramatised that suddenly took all of this material that had been repeatedly, as you say, in the press, in Computer Weekly, probably quite... I'm sure it's a great magazine. I've never read it, but it might be a bit dry.
Hundreds of pieces were written in regular newspapers as well. Hundreds.
And also, this is where it's quite difficult for Sir Ed Davey, I think, is because there were other people who were saying within Parliament, this is an issue. We've had Arbuthnot and McKellar who've been saying, and so how did those rumours not reach Sir Ed Davey for him to say, oh, actually, I'm in position of doing something about it?
This is why I think that one of the big problems is that there seems to be a trend towards blaming everything on the software
Yes.
or on the tools,
Yes.
on the technology. And that's a very easy out for someone like Ed Davey who comes out and says, well, I was lied to.
Right.
I mean, I am disgusted by how much I was lied to. And you think, oh, come on.
Yeah, really.
You know, you're not going to be able to get off the
can't get
hook
away
with
with
that.
But
And if the tools are only as good or bad as the people who are using them.
Sure.
And I think part of the problem with even blaming everything on Fujitsu, which some are very keen to do,
yes.
is failing to ascertain the fact that there were people in Parliament who knew what was going on, who made a political decision that it was better to allow a few small-time people in small towns catch the rap rather than open up a big scandal around the post office.
What we also need to do...
Yes, we're going to have to come back to this because we're running out of time. But we didn't even get to Rwanda. You know, you said no other stories in town. We'll get to it later on. You guys will be back. Thank you very much indeed.